Welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We are your co-hosts on this journey of creativity and productivity.
I Create Daily is for artists in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. I Create Daily is a movement for creators serious about your art.
If you're into creating anything, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Hello and welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Devani.
And I'm Leora.
And this is the podcast for creators serious about their art.
And our guest today is an amazing woman of many talents. Amber Bracegirdle is co-founder at MediaVine Publishing Network, responsible for helping thousands of bloggers monetize their websites through quality ads by distinguished brands. Amber is also co-host of the podcast Theory of Content, where they discuss all things content perfect for content creators, bloggers, website owners. In addition to all of that, Amber is a baker extraordinaire and managing editor of foodfanatic.com. And Amber is also a wife and mom of 2 young children. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you for having me. What an introduction. It was so nice.
Well, it's all true. And you are
also, it made me tired. I'm in San Antonio.
Right.
I'm in San Antonio, Texas, where I was born and raised. We moved back here about 2 years ago. 2 years ago. But before that, we lived in New Jersey, local to New York City, for about 10 years. And before that, we were in England. My husband is British. That's where Bracegirdle comes from. And so we've lived all over the world together, and finally came home to be close to my family and have my boys grow up with their cousins, which you maybe hear my little one. He's home. He has a Russian, so he's home with a nanny. And I get to see him every day. It's great. So we get to
working.
Get to do all those things, and he's home too. So
exactly. Yeah. So you have a choice of working from home or working from your office, and we're going to get into more of that. But before we do, I just want to mention, so we learned of you because we have 2 websites now with your company, MediaVine. What that means to our audience is that MediaVine is our ad network. So when you go to our sites, and those are the ads that you see are placed there through MediaVine. And it has been fantastic, life-changing, essentially, for us and our sites, because we went from
wonderful to hear.
Nothing for the sites. To like 5 to 10 times more earnings for the same content, essentially. And not only that, but we stayed away from a lot of different ad networks because of the spammy clickbait nature of it and the distaste to us of a lot of the networks.
And from our audience feedback. We don't, our first and most priority is to make quality research content in whatever we write about, and whatever ads we have our readers are happy with it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
right. And
go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, what I was going to say is we actually are moving away from the sort of network part of our name, specifically because networks in general have a bad connotation, both in the publishing, like the publisher world, the blogging side, and with advertisers, because they have not provided value in previous iterations. And so we are now just calling ourselves MediaVine, and we are not an ad network. We're an ad management company, but ads are just the beginning for us. I think as a member of our Facebook group and stuff like that, we're focusing on a bunch of Facebook plugins this year. We push you guys all the time on site speed, and which is crazy for an ad company, right? Which is why we're not an ad company. We're just not. That's not who we've ever been, and it's not who we're going to be in the future. The company has been around since 2004. I don't know if you watched the conference video with Eric.
Yes.
So it kind of told our story, and Eric cracks up. Hi, honey, I'm recording. Are you looking for hold on, guys. He's looking for it.
Yeah, no worries.
What are you looking for? A teacup?
That's wonderful about working from home.
I think it's in the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a crazy day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, Eric is like my little brother. And whenever like I tell people how he and I met, I'm this mouthy broad that he met at a Philadelphia food blogging conference. And he walked up to me and he was like, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" And I was like, "I don't know. Are you going to pay me 6 figures like my current job?" And he was like, "Oh, okay." And so we've been friends for a really long time, and I got to know the other 2 guys that created MediaVine with him along the way. And we created Food Fanatic together, and I just had this vision in my head of what I wanted that site to be, and they let me run with it, which was amazing. Like, one thing that I realized, like, I've had a food blog since 2008, and one of the things that I realized was I really did not like self-promotion, but I love promoting my friends. Promoting the blogs that I see that are just working their tail off to create fantastic content.
Yes.
And so when we created Food Fanatic, the goal for me with that site was to open up audiences to these people that I knew and loved and knew that had fantastic content, and open them up to new audiences using the techniques that the guys had used to build their other sites, right? That were techniques that bloggers weren't using. Things like syndication, which now people talk about all the time, but back when we started doing it, it was a dirty word, which the guys were just so flabbergasted by. They're like, "What do you mean nobody syndicates?" And they consider it stealing content. What do you mean? Like,
yeah.
So
there's still a lot of bloggers even that we talk to that kind of they start as a hobby and then they realize they really love it, and so they think about turning it into a business, and yet there's still a lot of that kind of nitty-gritty stuff that they don't really know to think about even.
Yeah, and communication is actually a blogger's best friend these days, because when your content gets shared to other sites, it elevates you in Google's eyes. But so let's step back just a little bit.
Sure.
So I wanted to start out with a shout out to MediaVine as a fantastic company, of which you were one of the co-founders. And I mean, it's like what you were saying, it's a good point. So instead of MediaVine Network or Publisher Network, it's like MediaVine is like a community. People who love to share and bring content into the world, and content creators, which the My Create Daily brand is all about creators and content writers, etc. And you mentioned having had a 6-figure job, and you also mentioned starting a food blog back in 2008. I think.
Yep.
So take us on the journey of how you went from basically having a great earning job, working for somebody else, doing your own thing, to doing a food blog. What was that like? What was that journey like, and what unfolded?
Right. So I didn't have a traditional trajectory for my career. I have a degree in education. I've never once used it. I started out thinking that I wanted to be a teacher because I worked as a nanny and in daycare in high school and stuff like that. And so along the way, I picked up a job at a company that plenty of people are familiar with, Travelocity, right? And I was just working in customer service. And it was right around the time that the internet really, really boomed. Okay, so we're talking 2002, 2003. And, everyone was suddenly getting online, and everyone had access to the internet. And people were starting to book online travel. And with any influx of a new source of revenue comes fraud. And back then, the legislation rulings around credit card stuff had not grown as quickly as the criminals move, right? And so Travelocity, I will never forget the day I was sitting in customer service, and Travelocity got this shipment of 18 sort of giant 24 by 24 cube boxes full of paper, and they were chargebacks. They were disputes. People had disputed credit card charges, and it was literally fraudsters were running rampant on the website because there were no checks in place, because no one knew that they needed to have checks, right? And so they immediately responded to the problem by building out a fraud team. I was 22, And they said, we want people from customer service to be part of this. Here's the process we've laid out. And I liked it so much. I liked being an analyst of that so much that even when I got the opportunity to promote to ticketing, right, airline ticketing, I refused it. I refused the raise. I refused all of it because I loved fraud so much. And it actually turned out to be a really good decision, because in the next couple of months, they made a specialized fraud team that was not part of customer service and moved us separately. And so then along that, I met my husband online. We met in an IRC chat room, which any of the geeks among us will be like, whoa, because literally IRC is the precursor to Slack and AOL Instant Messenger and all of it. It was around before any of that. And it was literally just text-based chat. And he and I met. He was in England. I was in Texas. And so I started bugging Travelocity for a transfer. We had a UK office. And I said, transfer me. I'll go. I'll teach them about fraud. And so finally they did. And we were engaged and married before my project ever ended. And so I actually worked in fraud analysis for them for 12 years. And then they decided, at that time, we had moved back to the States, and I was actually living in New Jersey and working from home for them in New Jersey. And they decided that they wanted to move everything local to Dallas. And my husband has a very successful career with a financial investment firm. And he did not want to leave it. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm getting laid off, which was really hard to walk away from, right? And what happened is that I landed a job with a software company that was also doing fraud work. And they, I went from a $40,000 a year job to a $120,000 a year job, overnight, just with the experience that I had. And I was like, I can't even believe this is a thing that's happening.
Right.
But it was just that line of experience. And so I did that for a solid year. And I loved the company, and it was a startup company, and they eventually sold to, one of these big firms that then dismantled the product.
Aww.
Right. And so I could see where it was going. And it was right around the same time that we were trying to have our first son. Both of my kids are from infertility treatments. And when I did finally get pregnant, I was like, I do not want to spend all of my time traveling all over, which is what I was doing for that software company. And so it was right around that time. I met Eric at that conference in September of 2012. And we decided to start working together. And we launched Food Fanatic on January 28th of 2013. I got pregnant with my son on the 31st.
Wow.
So yeah, so we I always joke that Food Fanatic and Evan are twins. They're Irish twins. And MediaVine and Will are also Irish twins, because we started MediaVine when I got pregnant with Will. We started the ad portion of the company when I got pregnant with Will. And it really started kicking off when he was born. So they really, both of my kids, the timing is very strange, right? And it's the worst possible thing for a working mom. You're like, oh, let me go and do this crazy thing. Right. But basically I'm lucky enough that my husband and I, we had already been living on the, me only making us, $30,000 to $40,000 a year, for so long that, of course, the big jump, the $70,000 jump, was great. But when I got pregnant and said, I don't want to do this anymore, I was able to walk away, and we were still okay. Because we, luckily he's extremely good with money. I maybe am not, but he is. And so he said, I think we can do this. We can make it work. Obviously we have to tighten our belts, but we can make this work. And I think that's so important. If you are going to follow your dreams, whether you have a partner that helps you do it, or if you have a way to support yourself to do it, there are always ways to make things happen. Right.
Yeah.
And so I said to the guys, I was like, I will come and work for you full time. Because they had said to me right from the start that they wanted me to come and work for them full time when I was ready. And, so I said to them, okay, I'm ready. And so I left my job in July of that year and started working for them full time in 2013.
So did you, give me a second, but did you still have, so when did you start your food blog? You had already started it, right?
Oh yeah, my food blog had been around since 2008.
Wow.
So it was 5 years old at this point.
Wow.
So you started while working in fraud.
Yeah, I did. It was just a side gig because I was living all over the world. And the reason that I started it was that I missed my grandma.
Aww.
My grandmother was the single strongest influence in my life. And she and I cooked together all the time. And so, oh Lord have mercy, 1 second. Okay. And so she and I worked together. She and I cooked together all the time. And I'll never forget, like, I'm terrible. I bake all the time, but I am terrible with pie crust. And I said to her one time when I came home from England for like a week, I was like, Grandma, Nanny, I really want you to teach me how to make pie crust because I can't do it. And she's like, all right, let's do it. And of course, there's no recipe involved. She's just going to do what she's always done. And sure enough, the damn thing did not come together. And my grandmother was never one to mince words. And I remember her just being like, what the hell's the matter with this thing? This is how it goes. Like, what? And I was just like, oh, it's me, Grandma. I'm pie cursed. Like, I'm just pie cursed. It was so funny though. It was one of those moments where you're just like, I can't even make this up. Like, she's so mad and she was just cursing up a storm and it was hysterical. You know, she never took anything from anybody. And I try to live my life that way too. Like, she was exceptionally kind, but she also didn't take any ish from anybody.
Yeah.
She's the reason I started. I wanted to catalog the recipes that I missed from home that she taught me and that I was missing just in terms of being from South Texas. You know, there is no such thing as Tex-Mex. I mean, there is Tex-Mex in England, but it's not accurate or correct, or it's a blasphemy really. And so, you know, I started learning how to make my own tortillas and how to make my own enchilada sauce and, you know, all of those things. And so that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted a way to catalog that. And, you know, my husband's a developer, so he's like, you should just start a website. And so when we moved to New Jersey, that's what I did. I started a website. And so the whole reason that Eric and I met is that we both went to a food blogging conference. He went looking for talent, and I went to sort of focus again. And I had a couple of other friends that were going. And the whole reason that he even noticed me, or that Josh noticed me, who's my podcasting partner, and was there speaking about SEO, is that there was a Google Plus person there that was like, I was asking about their terms and conditions, because at the time Google Plus's terms and conditions said that they owned your photo.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, that's not cool. How do you respond to that? And they didn't have an answer. And then later somebody else was like saying to all of this room full of content creators that want to make their blog their business. That's literally why they're at the conference.
Right.
Said to the entire room of people, no one is paying their mortgage with their blog. You just need to give that dream up right now.
Ooh.
And I was like, you know, and I just waited until someone called on me. And then I was like, I can't sit here and listen to you tell people that. I know at least 5 bloggers. I mean, and this was 2013. I know at least 5 bloggers that are paying their mortgage with their blog, and it absolutely can be done. And just because you're not doing it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Wow.
Like, I don't suffer people who think that they can tell other people how to dream.
Right.
Well,
what you just said is a really good point, and that is there's so much information and misinformation, because what is true for one may not at all be true.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they were sharing their truth. He was sharing his truth, but he only had a small piece of the puzzle.
Right. That asterisk of like, it didn't work for me, but
right. Exactly. And I mean, you just felt the air go out of the room, right? Well, everyone in that room became deflated.
Right.
And I was just like, that was so upsetting to me, because you know, every single one of the women, it was almost entirely a crowd of women. I think Chef Dennis was there, which cracks me up because he's in Florida. And that was, I think, the first time I met him. He's one of our biggest cheerleaders. He's so funny. But he was there, and you just saw, I think women internalize this more than men do. Men are like, whatever, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Like, right. I don't need, you know, like I feel like in general, men are able to piecemeal advice at conferences better and know what, like they have a better filter of, yeah, that's going to work for me, or no, this guy's full of BS in terms of how I am doing things. Whereas women just internalize all the things and are like, oh, but they said I can't do it.
Right.
And so for me, like, that was exceptionally frustrating.
Yeah.
To watch every single woman that was there to sort of kick butt and take names suddenly become deflated and
wow.
Like unhappy with, like, why were they even wasting their time at this conference, away from their kids, away from their family, away from their job, if it's not going to pan out into anything,
right.
You know? And so,
and there's just like, there's a way to inform somebody of the realities without being depressing about it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean,
it might take a while. You might need to get a job to supplement income.
Yeah.
There are things you might need to do, but eventually, if you do this every day, it'll work.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, bloggers are the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And I don't think there's a single one of them I've ever met that, if they put their head down and don't pay attention to other people and just do what they in their heart feel is right for their audience and for this beautiful thing that they have created, that they're somehow they're not successful. Yeah. Like, the ones who falter are the ones who are listening to all the noise and start going down a path of, well, everybody else has to do it this way, so that's the way I'm going to do it. So, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, such an
yeah, and it's hysterical to me because that's how we built MediaVine, right? Like, we had no intention. Like, when I went to work for the guys, all we wanted to do was build a food site, right? Mm-hmm. I had no intention of doing what we do now, and it is become the biggest passion of my life beyond my family. Yeah. Because we're able to build sustainable businesses with content creators. And for me, that is the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life, right? And it's the most supportive, natural thing I've ever done. And so when we decided, like, the whole reason we decided to build the technology that we run on is that our own sites, we were in ad networks, and with our own sites, as Eric said in that video, like, overnight, our income suddenly cut in half with no explanation.
Yeah.
And we were 4 families that needed support, plus all of our, we had 50 contributors to Food Fanatic at the time, and I want to say they had at least that many to each of the other 3 sites. So we had all of those families to support. And our ad network was just like, and we're like, yo, that doesn't work. And so Eric started doing all this research and said, I think I can build something. And the reason, like, it was all just kind of magic, right? Because the reason that we had to build something that scaled was because the sizes of the sites varied so vastly. Food Fanatic was at about 500,000 page views a month, but the Hollywood Gossip was at 30 million.
Wow.
And so they had to, whatever he built, in order for him not to spend every day fiddling with all the crap, he had to build something that scaled between them. And it actually became sort of the magic that brought MediaVine to life, was the fact that it doesn't matter how small or how big, we can work with anybody because the technology is the same.
Yeah.
And the technology can scale in either direction to fit the site that it's working with.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And so yeah.
I got chills actually a little bit when you were saying, talking about how it is that MediaVine transformed into a media and an advertising provision company for bloggers.
Right.
Because, and how the arc of how that goes back to that moment in that conference where you were so incensed by, the deflation that was going on erroneously from the speaker, one person giving misinformation that caused you and spirits to drop. So what did you, you stood up and you spoke, and Eric saw you, I think, again, speaking out and not saying something, and that's how the conversation ensued and followed that. But what happened in that moment where I'm fascinated in general by crossroads and by intersections in life that seem to, connect the dots. And that moment connects so much with what you're doing now, which you said is your most passionate thing next to your family. And that was like the beginning of that journey. That's where that seed was planted. So tell us what happened just a little bit in that conference at that moment. You probably had all kinds of people coming up to you afterwards, but what happened?
I mean, to be honest with you, my friends that I were with, there used to be me being the outspoken, mouthy girl that I am. And so I don't think that they had much to say about it. I think that, having Eric come up to me, I was like, who is this guy? It's not lost on me that he looks like Bradley Cooper. And so he walked up and he was like, hey, I'm Eric. And I was like, what is happening? I think I was with, sorry, my 2-year-old. I was with so many of my own friends that I don't know that at least my memory is not there, that we discussed it a lot afterwards. I remember saying my piece, and then, they said something on the panel of like, well, of course, everyone's mileage will vary, blah, 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 because obviously I had just thrown a gauntlet. Yeah. And I think it just after that, when I'm, it's not even something that I'm realizing until exactly this moment, but I think when the guy said they wanted to build, thanks, Annie, when I said that I wanted to build Food Fanatic, one of the first things I said to the guys is I want to pull in all of these bloggers that have their own audiences and that can bring a passion to something specific at Food Fanatic. Like literally that was our pitch to them was, you write about all these different things on your own site. What's one thing that you're super passionate about that you want to write about for us? Because that's what we want, because that's what the site name speaks to, right? And so, like, for example, we would get someone who, like Amy Sugarman from Sugary Sweets, she does all sorts of stuff on her blog, but she started doing homemade candy specifically, like homemade fudge and that kind of stuff specifically for us. And then like Christina from Dessert for Two, she was writing on her own site only about desserts for two, because that's the name of her site. But her passion is actually scaling down recipes to be for two people. And so I said to her, why don't you write dinners for two for us? And that will give you sort of this avenue so that you can start introducing them to your audience without them being like, well, what are you doing? The name of the site's Desserts for Two. Like a lot of bloggers get really caught up in that feedback loop, and everybody likes to be a jerk on the internet because they can hide behind a computer screen. So I think they get caught up in that, if they somehow change, they're being inauthentic when in fact it's the complete opposite. People change. Right. And so it gave them a way to do something new and what I found really funny was that the more strict they got with their fanatic sort of niche, the more creative they got.
Yeah. Interesting.
So like we have a peanut butter fanatic that if you go and you look at the peanut butter archives on Food Fanatic, Sarah, just like every single month, it's nuts the stuff she comes up with that is peanut butter based. Wow. Or like Christina, she has credited us. Like I don't know, I think she would have gotten there in the end for sure. She's so driven, but she credits us with her second cookbook. Like her first one was all about desserts for two, and her second one was Comfort and Joy, and it was all meals, like dinners for two. And she started out doing that on our site. And I think she realized that she could sort of expand beyond sweets and it would be okay. Mm-hmm. Or like, I'm trying to think of some of the people that just blow my mind with their stuff every month. We have an avocado fanatic that goes bananas, literally. Like she's done banana avocado stuff. And we have lots of breakfast fanatic. Like, so the breakfast stuff, I think, they get a little more broad, but they have so much fun with it. And it just, I think really though, the very concentrated choices that they make for what niche they want to write about is where we get the most creativity. And so I actually, whenever I talk to them, I try and guide them in that direction of focus down so that you can be even more creative, because we all hit those walls where we don't want to do stuff anymore. Yeah. And, that's actually something that I focus on with theory of content is bloggers get so caught, especially food bloggers, I think, get so caught up in the idea of craft bloggers of, I have to make something new. I have to make something new and creative in order to keep my audience captivated. And you get burnt out on that. I know I got burnt out on that. I haven't blogged on Bluebonnet Baker in 2.5 years because I just got burnt out on trying to come up with a new idea. And then the self-promotion that came along with it. By the time I actually got to the point of sharing the enchiladas, I was so sick of the enchiladas that I was like, no, yeah. And so, right. And so with one of the things we keep trying to open people's eyes up about on theory of content is not every post has to be like a recipe post or a craft post. Like, you can write for your Google audience and write about things that are related, but that aren't necessarily, let me go make a recipe and photograph it and put that on the blog. Like, I always give the example that we have on Food Fanatic of parboiling. We decided we wanted to attack that term because we were ranking really well on how to parboil, even though the post that we had was how to parboil potatoes. And so we went out and we wrote like, I want to say 8 more posts that you would think, like, how can you write 8 posts about parboiling? You absolutely can. Like, we parboiled mixed vegetables and carrots and sweet potatoes and rice and all of this. It helped us raise our Google rankings, but in writing those posts, I actually got to have a lot of fun because I did a bunch of research. Like, the basic process of parboiling doesn't really change per each of those items, right? Like, they're gonna boil for a certain amount of minutes, and then you're gonna cool them, and then you're gonna refrigerate them. Like, that's what happens. Mm-hmm. But I was able to, like, in order to flesh out the posts, I went and researched stuff about that item. Like, for example, I had no ideas that potatoes are technically nightshades and are poisonous if raw. Or that carrots, that the idea that carrots are good for your eyesight is a complete and total myth.
Really?
It's a complete and total myth put out by the British Air Force during World War II. As an explanation as to why their pilots were so good at shooting down German planes.
Wow.
And what the actual truth was is that they had invented radar. So it was, all of that I learned writing about parboiling.
I guess they were like, what's the closest vegetable to a radar? Let's make that the one that makes your eyesight.
Well, the reason that they chose carrots is carrots were one of the few things that were still being grown in Britain during World War II, without the need for importing of any kind. And so everybody was eating carrots all the time. And so it was kind of like, it was doing double duty. It was getting British people to focus on, this is a patriotic thing, eat British carrots, but also it's good for your eyesight and will help in the war effort, which was complete and total malarkey. And it's so interesting to me, and it's stuff like that I geek out about. Like, it helps me to create the post that becomes engaging and interesting for the reader who has come not because they're a loyal Food Fanatic reader, but because they're looking for how to parboil carrots. You know what I mean? And that maybe gets them to stay.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different process to how content creators tend to go about their blog posts. And I think if you can give them opportunities like that, where they sort of change up their routine, it gets the creative juices flowing.
Definitely.
I love that. And there's like a million different ways we could go with all of that information.
Absolutely.
And I think one important one for our audience, for sure, a lot of our audience, they're either already blogging, they've been blogging for a little bit, but would like to be more effective at blogging, or they're still on the fence of, I don't know if this is something I want to pursue. And so you touched on SEO, you touched on content creativity and niching down. What are some things, like maybe 1 to 3 things that you would recommend for people who are more at the beginning of their journey? What should they be focusing on?
I think focus, like in general, decide what you want to share. You know, everybody can be interested in everything, and I think there's definitely a place for that. You know, there are the pioneer women of the world that, you know, have homeschooling niches and everything on their blog, or Six Sisters, or whatever it may be. But I think it's easier if you pick a focus. I think it's easier because it comes from a place of passion. And so it's easier for you to sort of write things that come across authentically, and that your audience comes back for.
Sorry about the dog alarm here.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm supposed to be inside. Check out. All right. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, because what you're describing too is that the content creators, you know, they may start some kind of a cooking blog, but and preferably not named by that specific niche, but they start there and they become the expert, the authority on everything to do with parboiling, for instance, using that example. And from there they can branch out once they're successfully monetizing through the traffic, you know, getting paid for their efforts. But speaking of paid for efforts, do you guys still have openings for food bloggers, and do they get paid, if that's an appropriate question? I don't know if you can answer that.
So we've always paid our Food Fanatics. We don't pay like what a brand would pay, but we pay for the right to publish the post first, but we do allow them to syndicate it back to their site, and they are also allowed to link to themselves twice within their post so that they can build up a nice backlink profile, right? Food Fanatic is typically a bigger site than theirs, and so it provides, you know, a way to build that way. So we do pay them. We don't pay them a lot. We aren't currently adding more people. We're kind of in a place where we're about ready. You know, I think I mentioned like we're working on WordPress plugins and stuff like that. But the truth is that all of our owned and operated sites live on a content system, a CMS that is not WordPress. It's I call it Eric Press, right? Like it was built by him, and it's completely custom, and so we can't install WordPress plugins on it to eat our own dog food, as the techs like to say. And for us, that's a problem. Like not because necessarily like that we couldn't build up a good product without it, but because for us it's extremely important that we're testing this stuff on ourselves first. Like we do the same thing with the ads, right? We don't push something out to MediaVine without first having tested it on the Hollywood Gossip and Food Fanatic and TV Fanatic. Like that is like a promise that we made to ourselves early on, that we wouldn't put these content creators are trusting us with their livelihoods. And so that we wouldn't put them in the path of vulnerability, right? As much as humanly possible. And that if we did make them vulnerable to a loss, that we would cover it. And we have done that every time that it has happened. We have borne the brunt of that, because we recognize the trust that we're being given, because we've been in their shoes.
Yes.
And so we're moving everything to WordPress. And then once we do that later this year, my hope is that, you know, we're going to change up how we do like even the actual like post entering, that we can expand a little bit more. Because as theory of content will tell you, the more surface area of content you can give Google, the more traffic you get.
Right, definitely. So for writers in the audience who might be wondering if they can earn a living writing for websites, I know that that's not your specific thing per se, but you probably have an industry knowledge. What might they expect from a quality article? 2,000 words.
I mean, we don't ever ask for 2,000 words. Sometimes we get it, but we ask for about $300 to $500.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a recipe for your recipe site, right? So
yeah.
Okay. So that's a little different.
So, I mean, I actually don't know what we pay the contributors on the entertainment sites because I've never been involved in that side of it. I know we do pay them, but I don't know how much we pay them. For Food Fanatic, we run about $50 a post, and typically we cap people at 2 to 3 a month. So obviously it's not something that they're making their livelihood unless they're writing for a bunch of different sites, which is entirely possible.
Right.
But I think that's part of the reasons that we specifically looked for food bloggers, is that we wanted to make sure they had a revenue stream that was not just Food Fanatic. And then we also provide, there are a lot of brands who, we do influencer marketing at MediaVine as well. And we have a lot of brands who like the attractiveness of the Food Fanatic model of syndicating from Food Fanatic as well as the blogger's website. And so we do get more influencer marketing that points to specifically our contributors. So we kind of consider that a way for us to give back to them in addition to the fact that they can use this post on their own site and run the advertising on their own site. So like Nielsen Massey works with us a lot. We worked with La Crusade, Kitchen IQ. Recently we worked with a soy sauce company that I'm blanking on. So it wasn't Kikkoman, it was a different one. I'm trying to think of what it was. I'm not sure. I'd have to go look. But those are ways that we can provide decent money, because we go out and we negotiate, and we, on behalf of the blogger, and we keep 20% of what we negotiate, but we always negotiate above the rate that they've given us as like the thing that they want. And typically we're able to get them even more than they wanted, plus our fee on top of that. So there's like no loss whatsoever. And that's the same way that we do MediaVine, is like, when you're in your MediaVine dashboard, there's a place for you to fill out your influencer marketing stuff, and whatever rate you have there, that's not like set in stone. It's like, this is sort of a starting point, and then we'll negotiate. And I know, when I was doing this all by myself, there were certain campaigns where I was able to say, someone's rate was $2,500 and I got them $4,700. Mm-hmm. So it was like, we definitely go out, we see ourselves, our job is to be an advocate. And we have the strength of, nearly 3,000 sites now, to be able to say, this is what these people are worth. Pay it or don't. We don't have to work with you. You don't have to get access to our 3,000 sites. Like, that's on you. But our position is always, we are the advocate of the blogger. Right. We're not in this to sell our company and walk away. Like, we don't trust people to do this correctly. Yeah. And so that's where we are with pretty much everything we do, is like, we're going to do this the right way, even if it takes longer, because we are thinking long-term. We're not looking to find an investor and walk. Right. We're looking to do it the right way so that 15, 20 years from now, I'm still here and I'm still having weekly phone calls with publishers, and I'm still like in it to win it, like making sure that they are living their best lives.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
So for our audience, influencers would be, if you've built a large enough audience, whether through your website or social media site, that there are companies who may pay you to represent their product in some way. Can you give us an idea, for instance, the influencer who was asking around $2,600 and you got $4,700, example of what that entails? Like, what did the influencer need to do for that?
So that particular campaign, they had to create a unique recipe as well as a shopping list. It was with a grocery store chain, and so they had a budget that they had to go to the grocery store chain and basically create a menu plan. One of the recipes that they created had to be brand new, but they basically were making a weekly recipe plan using stuff from their archives, as well as one new recipe, and showing how you could purchase all of the fresh ingredients for those recipes at this local grocery store chain for under X amount of money. Right. So there were, for that one, they had a little bit of a photo shoot in the grocery store where like they were taking, like they had people, they took a husband or whatever who took pictures of them like in the aisle, and they showed like the grocery store store brand and picking those things up, and then sort of showcasing the unique recipe. I seem to remember that the grocery store chain actually wanted them to feature a particular department. So like one of them got the seafood department and another one got the meat department. And so like whatever the recipe was that they were creating specifically for the campaign focused on that department, but then the rest of their menu plan came out of their archives and they sort of fleshed it out that way. And what we did is we actually had them update their old posts with information about the brand for a certain amount of time. I think it was like 60 days or something, and say that post had been made part of the total campaign.
Nice. Well, that's great. Yeah, that's good to know. I'm sure that will help our audience as well. And we've already
that's an important point actually that I bring up with bloggers all the time, that it doesn't seem to occur to them until you mention it, is if you have a post that's doing really well that sort of speaks to a particular brand, like say for example you have a chocolate hazelnut spread brownie that's going bananas. Go talk to Nutella and say, I have this post. I am willing to name drop you in the post. I am willing to add you as the featured ingredient. I am willing to promote this as a sponsored Nutella post. I will let you syndicate it to your website, blah, blah, blah. And you've already got the social proof to show, like you can show them the traffic that the post is already getting, and the audience that they will get access to already.
Yeah.
And you're not doing any more work. Like you're not having to reshoot. You're not having to anything. You literally are just offering up this thing that you've already proven is a winner to them for an amount of money.
And what do you know, like, is there a going rate that a blogger?
It depends on the blogger. It depends on the site and your social reach and all of that stuff. Like we could have an entire other call about how to set your rates. Yeah. But my friend Julie Diley of The Little Kitchen has great advice about that. She says, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, the number that you're asking, you're not asking enough.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
And she's right? Like if it doesn't make you go, okay, this is what I'm going to ask for, you're not asking for enough.
That's
okay.
a good
that's
ratio.
a good rule of thumb. Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic, very informative. We really admire you guys and all that you're doing.
Thank you.
The fact that all the founders started out basically doing exactly what it is that all your customers, your clients are now. And so, you're in the trenches still, you know what it's like. And since we're a podcast about creators and creating, before we let you go, do you have any daily creative structure? And if so, what is it?
Oh man. So I haven't been creative in terms of blogging for a long time. But I'm really getting into, my 4-year-old he loves to color. And so I like to try and color with him on a daily basis. It really gets me out of my head. It gets you into that same space that you need to be in as a creator. Yeah. So that's what I do these days, is I color with my kid.
Cool.
And the other thing that I do is, my best friend is still very actively blogging. And she and I spitball recipe ideas all the time. And she'll be like, okay, I got to make a recipe using this, go. And I'll be like, okay, so you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. And that really helps me stay in that place that I want to be in, where eventually I will go back to food blogging. I will someday get time when I feel like eventually my children will not be tiny enough for me to be with them every waking moment. And so I will be able to have that creative outlet again. And so it keeps me in that headspace. which I think is important for my long-term goal of going back to it at some point.
Absolutely. Do you do the adult coloring books are you sharing?
Sometimes, and in fact, I have one right here.
But for anybody wondering, adult coloring books, if you don't know what they are, they're basically...
We gave them out as swag at one point.
Oh, that's so cool.
So this is like the lone one that's left, and my conference planning person Megan was like, just take this home. Yeah, you can use it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I can't use it.
To good use. And it was branded to MediaVine.
It was one of the first things we ever sent to a conference as swag. I can't even remember what conference we sent it to. I think it was Focused, which is a homeschooling conference. But my like requirement with swag is that it be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like an adult coloring book, especially like when you're flying back from a conference and you have all these ideas flowing through your head, like that's useful because you can sort of focus on the coloring and let those things marinate, and then you're ready to hit the ground running.
That's a great point because you're too tired to probably do actual work. Mm-hmm. But
and you don't want to feel lazy by watching a movie on the plane.
Right.
You're just like,
plus I think you can't concentrate on a movie when you've got all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I know I couldn't, like when I flew back from our conference in San Jose a couple weeks ago, like I couldn't focus. I mean, my flight was so early in the morning and I couldn't sleep and I couldn't read. Like I literally just doodled for 2 hours because I doodled. And then when I could use my laptop, I edited photos for Food Fanatic because it's a thing that just kind of like I can do without like even really thinking about it and let the conference roll through my head.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, glad to hear that you're keeping your fingers in the creative pot.
Absolutely.
And again, thank you so much for being a fantastic company with MediaVine and for taking the time to share all that you shared with us today. Anytime.
This is what we're about. We love helping people grow and helping people feel inspired and getting what they want out of their business.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that your next conference for I've already missed the 2018. I only just heard about it recently, so because we just joined, but I'm hoping your next one might be somewhere near on the East Coast. Do you know where your next one's going to be?
So we keep knocking around ideas. Eric wants New York City, but we would need $11 million.
Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think we may go down the middle and do two. So we'll do two conferences, I think. Like we keep talking about doing it. We'll do one in Chicago and one in San Antonio. Okay. Is the tentative idea. This may change entirely because Eric is known as Cheese Mover in Chief. And I don't know if you've ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
But we refer to him as Cheese Mover in Chief. He loves the title. Apparently he used it with pride on the phone with me earlier today, and I didn't know whether to be annoyed or horrified. So Cheese Mover in Chief is real intent on New York City. So we'll see what we're doing. We're still playing around with ideas, but I am hopeful for Chicago and San Antonio. And then we'll go out from there. We feel like nobody's ever done like two midline conferences, know? Sure. So and we did Charleston last year.
Oh, so no, we're in North Carolina. We're in North Carolina, so we were behind, or that would have been perfect for us. But we'll keep our ear to the ground on that one. And if anyone in our audience has a website that they would like to look into MediaVine, go to MediaVine.com and also tune in to Theory of Content podcast. Well, thank you so much, Amber. We'll talk with you soon.
I'm so grateful. Thank you, ladies. Have a great day.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.